I get asked a lot, Gary, do you rent to people receiving a rental subsidy? In most cases, people are referring to what's called Section 8. It's a section of our legislative code uh, related to our Housing and Urban Development Department, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Okay, congressional code. I can't give you the code number, but at HUD, Section 8 is literally means Section 8 of the code. What it refers to is the people, not really the properties. A lot of people are confused by that. So Section 8 refers to the people, not the properties. Okay. Years ago, HUD had its own housing. There were definitely government housing places all over the place. There's not as many now. They've been trying to phase them out for well over a generation now. Okay, and put that back in the public sector where it belongs. Okay, so now the answer to the original question is yes, I do and I have. Okay, under certain circumstances. Okay, they're not a protected class, by the way. You don't have to rent this section if you don't want to. I do encourage you to entertain the idea, though. So years ago, I used to not rent to them because I'd have people tell me all these horror stories, and of course I believe them. And I decided to look into it myself because I also met people who said, "No, we do pretty good." Again, it's all in the screening. You've got to screen any potential renter for your rentals, whether they're receiving a subsidy or not. Okay, but here's what I discovered over the years. Okay, Section 8 is ministered at the federal level, state level, county level, local level. Okay, in some counties you don't have the local level because the county does it all. Now, they people different administrations. In other words, Howard County, Maryland, may interpret the Section 8 administration differently than, say, Orange County, California. It's just natural. People have different interpretations. They can do things that way to a degree. So here's one of those interpretations I want to talk about, is when they provide funding, when they provide subsidy to tenants, and one tenant A is going to be renting a 3-bedroom single-family home, and tenant B is going to be renting a 3-bedroom apartment. Believe it or not, Section 8 years ago determined that they would lower the rates that they would approve for the single-family homes and raise the rates that were available, that based for people living in the apartments. And their logic was, and you can look this up. I'm like, why did they do that? Because their logic was that people living in a single-family home would have to pay more for utilities, which is true. You're going to have higher gas bills, higher electric bills. You're going to have probably your own water bill. Okay, if you're renting a single-family home, it's just natural, just part of the business. Okay, you expect that. Whereas in apartments, a lot of times your water, sewage, and garbage is paid for. And because you're in a building, an apartment, you generally will benefit what we call residual heat and things like that. So your utility bills would generally be lower. Well, Section 8 thought, well, because of that, they'll give more money to the apartment renters and less money to the house renters, which is totally, excuse my French, bass-ackwards. The real market, the real estate market, dictates that single-family homes are worth more, generally speaking, than apartments. Okay. So we stopped, here's what I'm getting to, we stopped leasing single-family homes to people receiving a Section 8 subsidy for that reason, and we kept renting more apartments to people receiving a Section 8 subsidy because we were getting more money, sometimes higher than market value, believe it or not. Okay, now the single-family homes, just so you know what we did, they had a great home buyer program. So we started turning some of our single-family homes into purchases for our Section 8 tenants. Isn't that a great idea? It worked pretty good for a couple people. Other people they didn't want to lose their Section 8 subsidy. They wanted to remain being tenants because they were afraid if something happened to them, but they lost their job, they'd lose the house and all this kind of stuff. Horrible thinking, limited scarcity thinking, but unfortunately some people will do that. So in any case, a couple more things on Section 8. It used to be if the Section 8 recipient was responsible for a portion of the rent. In some cases, Section 8, they said, we'll pay a portion, the tenant's going to pay a portion. If the tenant didn't pay their portion, you, the owner, could appeal to Section 8, and they would stop that person's subsidy until they paid you back. It was like your guaranteed rent. Now, some landlords were cheating. They would take the rent that Section 8 would give them, and even though the Section 8 said, no, this is all you get, they would tell the tenant, you got to pay me more, and they would collect more on the side. You can't do that. It's illegal. It's called fraud. So don't do that, okay? That's not what we're talking about here. In any case, they don't do that anymore, what I described earlier, and so now you have to evict them like you evict anybody else, you have this the same process. You know, if they don't pay you, you've got to evict them, okay? Which is a pain in the butt, believe me. Also, Section 8 will always come do an inspection on whatever rental you're going to provide to the person receiving the Section 8 subsidy. And they actually will hold up, you know, if this was a brand new lease, they'll hold up your first month's rent and then moving in until you fix everything, which means you're kind of being held hostage, so to speak. And they also would tell the Section 8 tenant, do not give you a deposit until that's done, which is wrong because you're holding that apartment off the market. So there's some conflict there, and that's why a lot of people don't like dealing with Section 8. I'm okay with it under certain circumstances. So you make your own judgment. You can read all about it in your training material, Module 4, in turning rental problems into real estate profits. That's where that's found, Module 4. Okay, next we'll talk about charitable organizations. So hang on to your seats. We'll see you next. Bye-bye.